December 23rd,
Check his pulse.
1944,
It's weak, sir. He
Camp
collapsed
Swift,
suddenly.
Texas.
Get a medic,
The mess
now!
hall smelled of
happened to
bacon.
him?
Elena Hoffman sat frozen before a tray that terrified her more than any interrogation room ever could.
The rules are clear.
Chrome
Compliance
gleaming,
is mandatory
steam
for all.
rising from
Any
4
questions?
perfect strips
No,
of golden
ma'am.
bacon, 2 fried eggs with yolks like small suns, toast spread with real butter, coffee that smelled of warmth and safety, orange juice in a small glass. Around her, 30 German women sat identically still. Not one fork had moved. Not one hand had reached for food. They had been taught to fear this moment. Elena's hands trembled against the table edge. 3 years as a Wehrmacht surgical nurse. 3 years of field hospitals from Poland to Bastogne. 3 years of learning that enemies tortured, that Americans were barbarians, that kindness was manipulation. Major Vogel had been very clear in Berlin, June 1943. His SS uniform crisp, his photographs graphic. Surgical tables that were actually torture devices. Women returned from American custody with hollow eyes, unable to practice medicine, broken by medical experiments disguised as examinations. If captured, Vogel had said, refuse all food, refuse all examinations. The Americans will use their supposed kindness as a weapon. Elena had believed every word, and now bacon sat before her smelling of everything she had been taught to fear. A black cook emerged from the kitchen. Older, weathered hands, kind face. He surveyed the untouched trays with something like hurt. "That's genuine Texas bacon, ladies," he said in a thick drawl. "Made it myself at 5 this morning. Best breakfast in the whole United States Army." A woman appeared beside him, 50 graying hair glasses. "My name is Ruth Becker," she said in perfect German. "I'm a translator. Mr. Henderson is trying to tell you the food is not poisoned." She paused. "He's going to eat some now to prove it." Henderson stabbed a piece of bacon from the nearest tray, chewed deliberately, swallowed, spread his hands. "Cease still standing. Now, please eat." Still no one moved. Elena stared at the bacon. Her stomach growled loud enough that Greta, her best friend since nursing school, turned with wide, frightened eyes. 4 weeks ago at Bastogne, Elena had amputated a 17-year-old boy's foot without morphine. Klaus had screamed so loudly the sound filled not just the barn, but Elena's nightmares. When American soldiers burst in moments later, when an American medic gave Klaus morphine, gave an enemy soldier pain relief, Elena's world had tilted. Why would they do that? 3 weeks of transport across America. Fed twice daily. Real soup, soft bread, once even chocolate. The landscape through train windows, whole towns, fat cattle people, living as if the world wasn't on fire. And a cowboy on horseback who had looked up, seen German prisoners, and tipped his hat in greeting. None of it made sense, unless everything they'd been taught was a lie. Elena's hand reached for the fork. Greta grabbed her arm. "Elena, don't, please." But Elena was already moving. The fork was cold, solid American steel. She stabbed bacon. The crispy exterior crunched. She lifted it to her mouth. This was the moment, the point of no return. She ate the bacon. Salt exploded across her taste buds. Fat melted on her tongue, coating her mouth with richness she'd forgotten existed. The smoke, the texture, the overwhelming, devastating flavor of real food, after 3 years of starvation, she hadn't even fully understood. It was the best thing she had tasted in 3 years. And she started to cry. Not from fear, from the realization that this was not a trap. This was just breakfast, which meant everything else might be a lie too. Around her, one by one, the other women began to eat. The mess hall filled with the sounds of forks on plates, quiet sobs, whispers in German. Elena ate everything. The eggs, the toast, the coffee bitter and perfect. Even the orange juice so sweet it made her throat ache. When she finished, she sat back and stared at the empty tray. Her stomach was full for the first time in months. She felt dizzy with it. And something else. Shame. Shame that a plate of bacon could undo her completely. Shame that she had believed the mice was so thoroughly. Shame that she was sitting in an American mess hall fed like a human being, not tortured, not experimented on, not broken. Just fed. Ruth Becker approached their table. "Good. You ate. Now you'll be assigned quarters. Tomorrow those interested can volunteer for hospital work. You'll be paid in camp currency. Elena looked up. You speak German very well. Ruth smiled slightly. I was born in Hamburg. My family left in 1933 when I was 15. We saw what was coming. The implication hung heavy. Jewish. Ruth's family had been Jewish. Do you hate us? Elena asked quietly. Ruth considered. I hate what your government did. But you're just nurses who got caught in a war you probably didn't want. Hard to hate that. She walked away, leaving Elena with a thought more destabilizing than the bacon the Americans didn't even hate them. They should. They had every right. But there was no hatred here. Just bacon and eggs and a translator who could distinguish between a government and its people. Elena stood slowly. Greta stood beside her. Together they followed the other women toward whatever came next. As they walked through Texas sunlight toward their barracks, Elena looked back once at the empty tray. At the moment, everything she believed had begun to unravel. Tomorrow she would meet Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Tomorrow the wall would crack wider. But for now she walked with a full stomach, a reeling mind, and certainty destroyed by nothing more than breakfast. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is not violence. Sometimes it is simply being kind when cruelty is expected. Sometimes it is bacon. The medical office smelled of coffee and lavender. Not fear, not sterile brutality, just coffee and wildflowers in a small vase on the desk. On the wall hung a photograph bordered in black ribbon, a man in army uniform, handsome smiling captain's bars on his collar. Elena stared at that ribbon and understood immediately. Dr. Sarah Mitchell entered a moment later. 42 blonde hair graying at temples, wedding ring still on her left hand. She moved with the careful control of someone carrying grief like a physical weight. She washed her hands first. 30 seconds, methodical the way surgeons do. Only then did she turn to face Elena. Good morning. Guten Morgen. Please sit on the examination table. Elena's legs moved on autopilot. She sat. Paper crinkled beneath her. Her heart hammered. This was it. This was where the facade would drop and she would discover what Americans really did to captured nurses. Elena Hoffman, age 26, surgical nurse 3 years. Dr. Mitchell read from a clipboard. Is this correct? Yes. Good. I'm going to conduct a physical examination. I'll explain everything before I do it. You can refuse any part. Do you understand? This was not what Major Vogel had described. This sounded like actual medical protocol. Do you understand? Dr. Mitchell repeated gently. Yes. The examination began. Blood pressure, cuff thermometer, stethoscope warmed between hands before touching Elena's chest. Each step explained, each touch professional, careful kind. Your blood pressure is low, malnutrition. Have you been eating regularly? The question was so absurd, Elena almost laughed. When there was food. Dr. Mitchell nodded as if this was expected. Made a note, continued. 15 minutes. That's all it took. 15 minutes of professional medical care. No interrogation, no torture, no experiments, just an examination. You're malnourished and exhausted, but otherwise healthy, Dr. Mitchell concluded. I'm prescribing vitamins and increased calories. You're free to go. Elena did not move. She sat on the table trying to reconcile what she'd experienced with what she'd been taught to expect. Is something wrong? Dr. Mitchell asked. The question broke something in Elena's chest. I don't understand. What don't you understand? Why didn't you? Elena couldn't finish. How did you ask someone why they hadn't hurt you? Dr. Mitchell's expression shifted. The professional neutrality slipped. Beneath it, Elena saw deep sadness and recognition. You were told I would hurt you. Not a question, a statement. Elena nodded, throat closing. Dr. Mitchell sat on a rolling stool, bringing herself to eye level. I took an oath when I became a doctor. First, do no harm. Have you heard of the Hippocratic Oath? Yes, we learned it in medical school. Then you know it doesn't have exceptions. It doesn't say first do no harm to Americans. It doesn't say except during wartime. It doesn't say unless they're your enemy. It says do no harm, period, absolute, without qualification. The words settled like a physical presence. You're my patient. Whether you're German or American doesn't matter in this room. My job is to ensure you're healthy. Nothing more, nothing less. Her voice became fiercer. War doesn't suspend medicine. War doesn't suspend ethics. In here, you're a human being who needs medical care, and I'm a doctor who provides it. That's what the American way means. Dignity for everyone, even enemies, especially enemies. She stood, picked up the photograph, held it so Elena could see. This was my husband, Captain Robert Mitchell. He died June 6, 1944. D-Day, Omaha Beach, killed by German machine gun fire. Elena's breath caught. She waited for anger, for hatred, for the mask to drop. But Dr. Mitchell's voice held only grief. Robert believed America stood for human dignity, for treating even enemies with basic decency. If I let hatred control how I practice medicine, if I let revenge dictate treatment, then Robert died for nothing. She turned back to Elena, eyes wet but voice steady. So I examine German prisoners. I treat them professionally, not because I've forgiven Germany, but because that's what being American means. That's what Robert died believing in, and I will not let his death be in vain. The silence was absolute. You can go now, Dr. Mitchell said gently. Ruth will be waiting outside. Elena stood on shaking legs. At the door, she paused. Dr. Mitchell, I'm sorry about your husband. Sarah Mitchell looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you. Now go. There are other patients waiting. Elena walked out into bright Texas sunlight, trying to understand what had just happened. The next morning, she volunteered for hospital work. The ward had 20 beds on each side. White sheets, clean floors, windows letting in light. Half the patients were German prisoners. Half were American soldiers. They were not segregated. In one bed, a German boy with broken ribs. In the next, an American with a broken leg. They were playing cards together, laughing despite not speaking each other's language, making up rules as they went. Sergeant Williams, the American medic, supervising her, noticed her expression. They play every day. Neither knows the rules, but it works out fine. Elena spent 4 hours changing bandages, taking vitals, administering medications. Basic nursing work. At the end, Williams thanked her, told her she'd done good work, told her to report back tomorrow. It was exactly like being a nurse. Not a prisoner, not an enemy, just a nurse. That evening, Elena experienced her first American shower. Hot water, abundant, endless hot water cascading over her head, her shoulders washing away 3 years of accumulated tension she hadn't known she carried. She picked up the bar of ivory soap. The scent made her eyes sting. Clean, simple, American. She washed her hair 3 times, watching water run gray, then clear. Washed her body until skin turned pink, and cried. She stood under that hot shower and cried for what she'd lost, for what she'd done, for the confusion of what was happening now. Anger that something as simple as hot water could undo her. Anger that the enemy had hot showers for prisoners while German soldiers froze. Anger at the casual abundance that mocked every justification she'd been given for 3 years of deprivation and cruelty. If America could provide hot showers for enemy prisoners, what did that say about Germany's claims of necessity? What did that say about every time she'd been told that withholding morphine from Allied prisoners was unavoidable? The lies. The endless web of lies. When she emerged raw and exposed, Greta was waiting. She looked at Elena's red eyes and said nothing. She too had taken a hot shower. She too understood. The next morning, Private James Cooper approached while Elena was working. Hoffman, you play baseball. No, I don't know this game. Cooper's face showed genuine shock. You don't know right, Germany. Well, we're having a game Sunday. Us guards versus camp staff. Doc Mitchell said we could invite you German nurses to watch. Fresh air. Something normal. Plus can't come to America and not see a baseball game. He grinned, open honest, the smile of someone who hadn't learned cynicism yet. Why would we want to watch you play games? Elena asked. That's just it. It's not about the game. It's about being normal for a couple hours. Not being at war. Just people on Sunday afternoon maybe drinking a Coca-Cola existing without all the other stuff. He pushed off the wall. Game starts at 2 o'clock. Bring whoever wants to come. We'll have hot dogs. See you Sunday, maybe. He walked away whistling. Elena stood there trying to understand. An invitation to watch baseball. With hot dogs. As if she were a guest, not a prisoner. The normalcy was more disorienting than any cruelty could have been. Saturday morning, cloudless sky, 8 o'clock. Elena and 4 other women, including reluctant Greta, climbed into an army truck. Ruth sat up front. They drove 20 minutes down dirt roads cutting through fields of cattle and grass. The Morrison Ranch announced itself with white rail fencing stretching for miles. Then buildings appeared. A red barn, iconic and perfect. A white house with a wraparound porch. And an American flag moving gently in the breeze. Jack Morrison waited by the barn. 55, weathered-faced cowboy hat, leather vest. He had 5 horses saddled and ready. "Morning, ladies. Welcome to the Morrison Ranch. Been in my family since 1875. Today we're going to teach you to ride." He led Elena to a chestnut mare. "This here's Daisy, sweetest horse I've got." Elena approached cautiously, extended her hand. Daisy sniffed, then nuzzled gently. The horse's breath was warm, grassy. "She likes you," Jack said with approval. His rough but careful hands showed her how to mount. Foot in stirrup grab, saddle horns swing up and over. It took 3 tries. On the third, she made it, settling with an ungainly thump, and suddenly she was higher. The world looked different from up here. Bigger, more open, as if possibilities existed she couldn't see from the ground. "How's it feel?" Jack asked. "Strange, powerful, frightening." Jack smiled. "That's freedom, ma'am. That's what we're fighting for. Not just for Americans, for everybody. The freedom to sit on a horse on a Saturday morning and not worry about bombs or bullets or borders. Just being. Just existing in a moment that's yours and nobody can take it." For 3 hours, Elena learned. She walked, trotted briefly, cantered. Fell twice into strategically placed hay. Both times got back up and mounted again, because this was the most free she'd been in 3 years. At noon, Jack called a break. His daughter had set out sandwiches and lemonade on the porch. They sat in shade, ate, drank, talked. Jack told them about the ranch, about raising cattle and horses, and about Tommy, his son. Tommy died at Guadalcanal. Marines, 19 years old. His voice was rough but steady. In his last letter, he made me promise something. Promise that if we won, I'd help rebuild. Not with hate, with kindness. Said that's what would separate us from the enemy. Not being crueler, being better. He looked at Elena directly. "So that's what I'm doing, showing you what we're really about. Big skies, honest work, treating folks decent regardless of where they're from." They mounted again. Jack led a trail ride through his property, past cattle through fields of grass moving like water to a high point where they could see for miles. Texas spread below them. Vast, untouched by war. Whole. A land so big it made human conflicts seem small, borders arbitrary, the very idea of enemies absurd when faced with this much sky, this much earth. Elena sat on Daisy and understood what Jack Morrison was showing them. This was America. Not government or military or propaganda, but this, space, freedom. The ability to look at a horizon and know beyond it lay more possibility, more room, more life, and the willingness to share it. To invite enemies onto your land, your horses into your life, because you believed enemies could become friends. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. Jack heard her despite the distance. Nodded, tipped his hat, said nothing because nothing needed saying. As they prepared to leave, Jack approached Elena once more. "You come back anytime. Ranch is always here. You're always welcome." "Why?" Elena had to ask. "Your son died fighting us. Why welcome me?" Jack was quiet. Then, "Because Tommy would have wanted me to. Because being cruel won't bring him back. Because kindness, Miss Hoffman, kindness is the only thing that ever really wins. It just takes longer than we'd like." On the ride back, as sunset painted Texas orange and pink, Greta whispered, "I don't understand any of this." Elena looked at her friend's confused, fearful face. "Neither do I. But I think maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to understand. Maybe we're just supposed to feel it." Feel what? Elena thought about bacon and hot showers and a cowboy who chose kindness over grief. About Dr. Mitchell's oath and Cooper's invitation in The World from Horseback. "Hope," she said finally. "Maybe we're just supposed to feel hope." The truck carried them back to camp as darkness fell. Behind them, Jack Morrison was probably finishing his day's work, feeding horses, checking cattle, living the life his son died defending, choosing every day to honor that sacrifice with kindness. And Elena felt the last pieces of her certainty crumble. The cowboy had tipped his hat, had taught her to ride, had shown her what America meant. Nothing would ever be the same. Monday morning, Elena's third day of hospital work. She was changing bandages on the German boy with broken ribs when a new doctor entered the ward. 40 dark hair eyes that held both intelligence and sadness. His uniform identified him as a captain. Sergeant Williams introduced him. "Hoffman, this is Dr. Benjamin Cohen. He'll be working with us this week." Dr. Cohen extended his hand. His grip was firm professional. "You're the Frankfurt Medical School graduate." "Yes, 1941. Something flickered in his eyes. "My mother graduated Frankfurt Medical School, 1928, before they stopped admitting Jews." Elena froze. "Dr. Rachel Cohen," he continued, voice matter of fact. "She practiced in Munich until 1938. Then we left. England first, then America. She died 2 years ago. Never saw Germany again." "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "For what?" "For what happened to my mother." He paused. "Don't apologize yet. You don't know what I'm going to ask you." That afternoon, an emergency case came in. German prisoner, appendicitis near rupture. Needed immediate surgery. Dr. Mitchell scrubbed in. Dr. Cohen assisted. Elena was called to help. In the operating room, they worked with practiced efficiency. Mitchell, Cohen, and Elena moved in the synchronized dance of experienced surgical teams. Scalpel retractor sutures. The appendix was removed, patient stabilized, wound closed. Professional, clean, perfect. Post-op, as they cleaned instruments, Dr. Cohen spoke quietly. "You're very good at this, Elena. Where did you learn field hospitals?" 3 years. Poland, France, Eastern Front, Bastogne. "And in those field hospitals, did you treat Allied prisoners?" The question hung heavy. Elena's hands stilled on the instrument she was cleaning. This was the question she'd been dreading, the one that would force her to confront what she'd done. "Yes." "How did you treat them?" The silence stretched. Dr. Mitchell had stopped working, was listening. Elena could lie, could say they followed Geneva Convention standards. But she was tired of lies. "We treated German soldiers first, always." Her voice was barely audible. "If supplies were limited, which they usually were, prisoners received whatever was left. If there wasn't enough morphine, German soldiers got it. Prisoners didn't." She forced herself to continue. "We didn't torture them, but we didn't treat them the same. We told ourselves it was practical, that we had to prioritize our own people." "Did any die because of those decisions?" "Yes." "How many?" "I don't know. I didn't count." The crushing silence returned. Dr. Mitchell spoke first, her voice careful. "I'm not judging you, Elena. War puts doctors in impossible positions, but you need to understand something." She set down her instrument. "The oath I took doesn't say first do no harm to Americans. It means everyone, enemy prisoners included. Because if I start making exceptions, if I decide some patients matter more than others, then I'm not a doctor anymore. I'm just a soldier with a medical degree." Elena felt something break inside her chest. "We were told you were the barbarians," she whispered, "that you had no ethics, that you would torture prisoners." "I know what you were told." "But it was us, wasn't it?" Elena's voice cracked. "We were the ones violating medical ethics. We were the ones letting prisoners die because they weren't German enough. We were the ones who abandoned the oath." Dr. Mitchell didn't answer. Didn't need to. Elena buried her face in her hands and wept. Not from shame exactly, from the devastating realization that she'd spent 3 years serving a system that twisted everything she'd learned in medical school, that had taken the oath to heal and corrupted it into something unrecognizable. And she'd let it happen. Because questioning was dangerous. Because she'd wanted to believe her service mattered. Because she'd wanted to believe she was on the right side. Dr. Mitchell let her cry. When Elena finally looked up, Sarah handed her a clean handkerchief. "What do I do now?" Elena asked, voice broken. Before Dr. Mitchell could answer, Dr. Cohen spoke. "You want to know what to do?" He pulled up a stool, sat facing Elena. I'll tell you what my mother told me before she died. He looked at his hands, surgeon's hands like his mother's had been. She said, Benjamin, when this war ends, Germany will need doctors. Good doctors. Doctors who remember what medicine is supposed to be. Healing without hatred. Care without conditions. He looked up, met Elena's eyes. She made me promise if I ever treated German prisoners, I'd remember their patients first. Not enemies, not Germans, patients. And I'd treat them the way Frankfurt Medical School used to teach before they corrupted it. His voice became fiercer. Make them remember what medical ethics really means. Maybe then the next generation will be better. He stood, placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. So that's what I'm doing, keeping my promise to my mother. A German Jewish doctor who loved medicine more than she hated the people who drove her out. He looked at her directly. Can you keep that promise too, Elena? Can you go back to Germany and teach what my mother believed the medicine should be? Elena, through tears, said, yes, I can. I swear it. Dr. Mitchell added quietly, you heal, you learn, and when this war ends, you go back to Germany and practice medicine the right way. You teach others what you learned here. That's your responsibility. That's your redemption. 3 days later, Greta fell ill. High fever, coughing, blood, bacterial pneumonia, treatable with antibiotics. But Greta refused treatment. Elena rushed to her bedside. Greta, please, they can cure you. Penicillin works. Greta, delirious but fierce, grabbed Elena's arm. No, I won't let them experiment on me. I won't let them inject poison. It's not poison, Greta, listen to me. Everything we were told was lies, all of it. If that's true, Greta's eyes were wild. If they're good and we were wrong, then what does that make us? What does that make all the prisoners we let die? Her voice broke. I can't accept that, Elena. I would rather die believing I was right than live knowing I was wrong. She turned her face away. Final. Absolute. Dr. Mitchell tried to reason with her. American nurses tried. Elena begged. But Greta refused. Medical ethics meant they couldn't force treatment. 5 days later, Greta died of treatable pneumonia. Elena held her hand as she went. Greta's last words. Was I wrong? Yes, Elena whispered. But so was I. We all were. At Greta's funeral, a small, respectful service American soldiers served as pallbearers. Private Cooper played taps on trumpet. Jack Morrison attended, though not required. Elena stood at the grave afterward alone. Jack approached. I'm sorry about your friend. She didn't have to die. Penicillin would have saved her. And then why didn't she take it? Because she couldn't accept the truth. She'd rather die believing the propaganda than live knowing it was all lies. Elena's voice was hollow. The lies killed her, not the pneumonia. The lies. Jack was quiet. Then, my boy Tommy used to say the opposite of love isn't hate. It's fear. Fear makes you hate. Fear makes you lie. Fear makes you kill. Your friend was too afraid to let go. He paused. Don't make the same mistake, Elena. Sunday came. The baseball game. Elena and 12 other German women sat on grass at the diamond east of camp. American guards versus camp staff. She watched, confused by rules she didn't understand. Private Cooper played outfield. Between innings, he jogged over with glass bottles of Coca-Cola. Cold condensation beating on glass. Try it, he said, grinning. Elena took a sip. Sweet, fizzy cold. It was unlike anything she'd tasted. Good right, Cooper said. Nothing like a Coke on a hot day. Private Cooper, Elena said quietly. Why are you all so kind? We're enemies. We fought your soldiers. Some of us did terrible things. Why treat us like friends? Cooper sat on the grass beside her. You want the real answer? Because my dad taught me revenge makes you their equal. Mercy makes you better. We're better, Hoffman. We don't win by being crueler. We win by proving there's a better way. He looked at the game at German and American spectators sitting together. You're a nurse. You saved lives. German lives, yeah, but lives. That makes you worth saving too. He stood, dusted off his pants. Besides, anybody who appreciates bacon that much can't be all bad. Elena laughed. Real laugh. First in years. Cooper tipped his cap, ran back to the game. Elena watched Coca-Cola in hand and felt something fundamental shift. These weren't conquerors. These were just people. People who loved baseball and Coca-Cola and sunshine. People who treated enemies like human beings. Everything was a lie, everything. But the truth, devastating as it was also setting her free. That night, Elena wrote in the journal Ruth had given her, November 1945, "The war is ending. Germany is surrendering. I will be repatriated soon. I am going home to a destroyed country, to parents who may not believe what I tell them, to a medical system that must be rebuilt from nothing. But I made a promise to Dr. Mitchell, to Dr. Cohen, to his mother who I never met, to Greta who I couldn't save, to myself I will teach. I will show German medical students what Americans showed me, that the oath has no exceptions, that medicine has no nationality, that healing has no borders. First, do no harm to anyone, everyone, no exceptions. That's what being a doctor means. That's what I forgot. That's what America taught me. With bacon, with hot showers, with a cowboy's kindness, with a widow's oath, with a baseball game, and Coca-Cola. They didn't break me with cruelty. They broke me with kindness by showing me what I should have been all along." November 1945, the return. Elena was repatriated in November 1945. The journey home took 3 weeks by ship. She spent the time writing, planning, preparing for what she would face. Frankfurt was 70% destroyed. The medical school was rubble. The hospital where she'd trained was gone. Her family's apartment building was a crater. She found her parents in a basement shelter with 17 other families. The reunion was tears and disbelief. The Americans fed you, treated you medically. Her father couldn't believe it. "It's true, Papa. All true." Then everything we were told was lies. Yes, everything. Her mother asked the harder question, how do we rebuild from this? How do we look at ourselves? Elena thought about Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Cohen, Jack Morrison. We rebuild by doing better, by refusing to let it happen again. I'm going to become a doctor and teach others. Show them what the oath really means. 1947 to 1989, the teaching years. In 1947, Elena enrolled in the Allied Medical Reconstruction Program. The lead instructor was Dr. Sarah Mitchell. They recognized each other immediately, embraced, wept. "You came back," Sarah said. "I made a promise. Then let's teach you how to keep it." For 40 years, Elena taught at Frankfurt Medical School. She specialized in trauma surgery, but her real work was teaching ethics. Every semester began the same way. She would tell her story about bacon, about hot showers, about a cowboy named Jack, about Dr. Mitchell's oath, about Greta's death, about the lies and the truth. "First, do no harm," she would say. 4 words, no exceptions, not except in wartime, not except for enemies. Just do no harm, period. She trained over 3,000 students. Many became professors, department heads. All carried her lesson, medical ethics have no nationality. 1988, the letter at age 69, preparing for retirement, Elena received a letter from America, from Dr. Benjamin Cohen. "Dear Dr. Hoffman, I'm retiring after 42 years. I kept my promise to my mother, treated everyone the same, even those who probably wouldn't have done the same for me. I wanted you to know a colleague's daughter studies at Frankfurt. She says German medical ethics training is now the best in Europe. She mentioned her Professor Yu. You kept your promise too. My mother would be proud. Thank you for being part of that change. With deepest respect, Benjamin Cohen, MD." Elena framed that letter, hung it beside her medical chart from December 22, 1944, signed by Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Beside those, she hung the breakfast menu from her first day, and Jack Morrison's daughter had sent her his actual cowboy hat after he died in 1985. These artifacts told her story, proof that even in war humanity could survive if people chose it. 1986, the reunion. In May 1986, Elena was invited to Washington, D.C. for the 40th anniversary of WWII Day, a symposium on post-war reconstruction. At the hotel, she found them waiting. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, now 84, Dr. Benjamin Cohen, 76, Private James Cooper, 61, who had become a high school history teacher, and Jack Morrison's daughter, Sarah. They embraced. 4 decades of emotion in those embraces. That evening, sitting together in the hotel bar, Sarah Mitchell raised her coffee cup. To Robert, who believed in redemption. To Dr. Cohen's mother, who believed in hope. To Greta, who we couldn't save. To Jack and Tommy, who taught us kindness. And to Elena, who proved change is possible. To medicine without borders. To humanity without hatred. And to bacon. They laughed through tears. To bacon. Elena's speech the next day brought the audience to tears. She wore Jack's cowboy hat on stage. The propaganda told us Americans were barbarians, she said. They were right that Americans were different. Wrong about what made them different. You didn't break me with torture. You broke me by showing me what I should have been all along. That's the American way. And it works. Standing ovation, 5 minutes. Afterward, a young German medical student approached. Dr. Hoffman, I'm doing my residency in Israel next year. Palestinian and Israeli patients. Because you taught me medicine has no borders. I want to prove it. Elena, crying, said, yes, go, show them. Make it mean something. 1995. The final entry. Elena died in 1995 at age 77. 1 month before, she wrote in her journal, I am 77. I've practiced medicine 48 years, trained over 3,000 students. But the most important thing I ever did happened in 12 minutes. December 23, 1944. When I let an American doctor show me the truth and ate American bacon. The propaganda said Americans were barbarians. They didn't break me with cruelty. They broke me with kindness. First, no harm. And to anyone, everyone, no exceptions. That's the oath I broke. That's the oath Dr. Mitchell kept. That's the difference between medicine and barbarism. The examination table was cold, but the doctor's hands were warm. And in that gap between expectation and reality, my entire world shattered. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is kindness. That's the American way. 2024, the legacy continues today. Frankfurt Medical School displays 4 items in a glass case. 1. The breakfast menu from December 23, 1944's 2. Elena's medical chart signed by Dr. Sarah Mitchell. 3. Jack Morrison's cowboy hat. 4. A photograph, Elena Sarah Benjamin James at the 1986 reunion. Every year, first-year medical students gather before this case. A professor tells a story about a German nurse, an American breakfast, a Texas cowboy, and the truth that changed everything. About how bacon, baseball, and basic human decency defeated the Third Reich's most powerful weapon. Not on the battlefield, but in a mess hall in Texas. Before you learn medicine, the professor says, learn why you learn medicine. These artifacts prove that even in the darkest times, humanity can survive. If we choose it, if we remember the oath, if we refuse to make exceptions. The students stand in silence looking at the bacon menu, the cowboy hat, the photograph of 4 people who had been enemies and became family. Learning that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not violence. Sometimes it is simply being kind when cruelty is expected. Sometimes it is bacon.